Hi, I'm Meg Turville-Heights, the Grant Program Director for Wisconsin Humanities. Wisconsin Humanities, established in 1972 as an independent affiliate of the National Endowment for the Humanities. We're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization governed by a volunteer board of directors who come from across the state. So our focus is the humanities. We strengthen the roots of community life through educational and cultural programs that inspire civic participation and individual imagination. And on a regular basis, we have a full humanities-based program of grant funding along with all of our other programming. So we fund public humanities activities throughout the state. I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about our grant program and of course the recovery grants that we are issuing into deadlines coming up soon. So first of all, a key thing is to recognize what we're talking about when we're talking about the humanities. And this is really critical because this is the roots of what we are. So things like archaeology or art history or cultural anthropology, et cetera, those are humanities disciplines. Within a discipline, though, not everything is considered the humanities. For example, law or jurisprudence might be a discipline that we support, but we're not going to support necessarily just the activities of a law office. It's more about case law and the history of legal decisions or the history of law. So keeping those kinds of things in mind, and also just how the humanities are engaged, which is really a critical element. So humanities programs that we support need to reflect the experiences that engage the public. They need to be central to your proposal. They have to make human experience relevant, make us ask why. And above all, they need to serve the public. These are not private humanities activities for a closed private group that others can't join. Types of humanities can be reflected in the exhibitions, performances, community discussions, guest speakers, workshops, oral histories, town halls, creativity. We're all about that as well. So thinking about various different ways that you can engage the humanities, and we want to support those. The Wisconsin Humanities Recovery Grants are funded by the National Endowment for the Humanities and the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. Because of this, there is a mission and a role for those grants that's different from some of our other grant programs. That is that they need to prevent, prepare for, respond to, and recover from the pandemic. So the funds need to be going to organizations that in some way have experienced harm. Like the vast majority of people in Wisconsin can point to something that has been a harm, an impact due to the pandemic, whether it's they were closed, they have seen a reduction in donors, they had to let people go or furlough people. So there's all kinds of different ways that you can look at having had that impact. And the concept is that going forward, how do we prepare for future shutdowns? Is that capacity building? Is that building our ability to take our programming virtual? Is it making our archives more accessible, et cetera? It's to prevent. It could be providing different means of accessing a building and creating opportunities for people to be able to come and go without exposure in the event of disease outbreaks. Respond to or recover from. So this is also a case of, again, adjusting your programming to meet new realities. Recover from might be, if you're eligible for general operating expenses, providing funds to do some of the basic activities of your organization while trying to rebuild your coffers to be able to run your programs. These grants do not require matching funds. They are for $2,000 to $20,000. The All of the projects must be completed no later than October 31st, 2022. And there are two deadlines. The first is July 19th. The second will be October 15th. That application is slated to open September 15th. It may be slightly different from the one that we have now based on priorities as we evaluate how this first grant round rolls out. You can apply for these only through our online portal. You will be indicating again that pandemic impact. It's not a lengthy declaration. It's checking some boxes essentially. And note that the project period begins after the award date, and the award date is August 16th of 2021. So something to keep in mind here as well is that most of the questions that you're going to be asked on this application are either check boxes or very short answer questions. So really having in mind being succinct, but with great detail so that we know what it is that you want us to fund, but you can tell it to us as briefly as possible. Things that we can fund will be general operating expenses if you are a core humanities organization. And we'll get to that a little bit. But the core humanities organization is the only one that can ask for general operating expenses. Everybody can ask for any of the other things on this list. Humanities programming for help with strategic planning and capacity building, with digital transitions or in support of preservation and access programs, expansion of outdoor and virtual humanities programming, and equity assessments and planning related to the coronavirus and the economic crisis. Keep in mind, every last one of these things, though, still needs to be in support of your core humanities activities. So even if you're not a core humanities program organization like a museum or a historical society, your programming that you want us to fund, or the capacity building that you want us to fund, or the digital transition that you want us to fund has to be related to the humanities, because that's what we do. So what do we also mean by a digital transition? This is ways of making things more accessible, perhaps. So we could fund the equipment or expertise to take your traditional archive online to make it more accessible to people. It could be making some of your other programming accessible to people, finding ways to do hybrid productions of your exhibits so that people can access your exhibits online as well as in person. When we talk about capacity building, we're talking about things that will advance your humanities missions or the humanities focused aspects of your mission through operational, programmatic, financial, or organizational improvements or efficiencies. That can run such a wide gamut that it's really up to you to make the case for how those grant funds are going to assist you in that effort. So if you want more information about the recovery grants themselves, we want you to go to our Wisconsin Humanities Recovery Grants page, and you'll see on this page that we have a lot of detail, and it's a lot of words, but we've put all of the instructions in here. And you'll be able to find eligibility, which includes that you must be a nonprofit organization located in Wisconsin with an EIN on a Wisconsin address and a DUNS number. We will expect you to be able to, that you provide humanities programming to the public, and that you're able to demonstrate that through those check boxes that you've had some kind of impact due to the pandemic. We cannot fund individuals, for-profit organizations, organizations that are not offering humanities programming, political or advocacy organizations, or organizations acting solely as a fiscal receiver or a fiscal sponsor for a project. Important deadlines are on this page as well. I also want to direct you to the how to apply. There's a very important step down here, this detailed budget information. All of the allowable expenses are really discussed here. And in addition, it's also going to tell you what are ineligible. Now, we do not ordinarily fund general operating expenses in our grants. And so this is really an important thing for people to look at. It gives you some examples of what general operating expenses are. We do have several ineligible expenses, travel expenses, indirect costs on grant awards that are providing general operating support, equipment costs in excess of 20% of the grant. And equipment is tangible personal property, including information technology systems that have a useful life of more than a year. So that's really important kinds of stuff. So lots of different things in here that we cannot fund. Another thing that is really important on this website is the frequently asked question. And the reason that's important is because these are frequently asked questions. So I really do encourage you to take a look at the frequently asked questions and see if maybe they answer some of the questions that you have foremost on your mind right now. So the next thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is the overarching question a lot of people have is, are we eligible for general operating expenses? So libraries, historical societies, history type museums, humanities disciplines in accredited nonprofit or public institutions of higher education or public K-12 institutions, or are organizations whose core mission is the humanities, such as a folklore or storytelling organization. Those organizations are eligible to apply for general operating expenses. If you're an arts organization that's doing some humanities programming, that's great. We really would like you to come to us and ask for help with your humanities programming. Educational organizations, social service organizations, faith-based organizations, if you develop a particularly humanities-based program, that's something that we can fund. Under the recovery grants, we can also fund programming, some of these other kinds of things beyond humanities programming, such as capacity building, et cetera, as long as it is in support of a humanities program. There are going to be exceptions on both sides. So it's really important to make your case, but you do not have a lot of space to make that case in. So when you are asked to describe the humanities activities that your organization does, please be sure that you're providing us with examples of humanities activities. And don't assume that, for example, you might have museum in your name, but you don't actually do humanities activities within your museum. Or you may be an educational program in an accredited university, but you're not a humanities program. So there are going to be exceptions, and it's really going to be about making the case. For humanities programming, we do require that there be humanities expertise involved. That needs to be involved. It can be in the design, the planning, or the implementation of a humanities project. Generally, a master's or a PhD or exceptional expertise in a humanities subject is critical and required. Also, a culture keeper, such as a tribal elder, is also appropriate. The thing is that it can sometimes be really difficult to draw that line. A lot of times we will accept from certain organizations that we can assume that the curator of a museum, for example, has humanities expertise, even if they don't have that higher degree in a particular subject area. And it's also really important that the particular subject that you're hosting a program in, that the person whose higher degree and expertise you're pointing to has expertise in that subject. So being able to demonstrate that for us. In the recovery grants, we are asking for you to name who that person is and give us something brief about what their expertise level is, such as Jane Doe, professor of history, UW Milwaukee, is going to give us something and tell us that that person is, that you are acquiring some expertise in your program. Our regular grant program requires a lot more information about those humanities experts and for that, and for a lot of your programming, and because this is the core of what we do. It's not emergency response funding that has a mission of helping bring people back to their feet. It is to sponsor programs in the public humanities. So we do still offer these grants 7 times a year. 4 times a year for the mini grants. You can ask up to $2,000. The decisions are by the end of the month. For our major grants, those are 3 times a year, and it's up to $10,000. The decisions come about 2 months from the deadline for the major grants. A couple of really important distinctions. We want a lot more information. We really do want to understand you, your program, the humanities expertise you're employing. We're going to ask you to talk to us about your outreach as well, and how you're going to bring your audience in and who you're hoping to reach. And so there's a lot more narrative involved in our regular grant program applications. We do require matching funds or in-kind effort that has to be equivalent or greater than the amount of funds you're asking for. As I said, the humanities experts are required. We cannot, in this case, pay general operating expenses or usual or customary salaries. So it's only for the program-specific expenses. And it must serve the public. And the public is generally assumed to be Wisconsin residents. So another thing that I can do with the regular grant program is I can do draft review. I can offer people look at both their the budget, or I can look at your narrative. It works best if I can look at them together, and I can offer suggestions to make your project stronger, or to identify issues in the budget or other things that you need to be aware of to make your project eligible or strong. So if you go to our regular grants page, you will see that we have grant application deadlines besides the recovery grants. You can learn more about our mini and major grants. And if you go to this Get Started page, it'll take you through item by item what we're going to be asking you for in an application. You can see here that our mini grants are regularly quarterly in February, May, August, and November. And our major grants are in April, August, and December. So kind of just keep in mind, there's a variety of different ways that we can go at the humanities to engage them, from book discussions and community issues and history harvests and websites, documentaries, games. There's a whole lot of different ways that you can approach the humanities and engage them in the projects that you want to do. And so we do encourage you to as well partner with other organizations in your community, that it can allow you to dig deeper and reach more broadly than your more localized audience. A lot of times these different groups can help you expand into groups of people that you haven't worked with before. You might be able to tackle, you might be able to find humanities expertise in some of these different kinds of organizations that you haven't done things with before. So if you think in terms of a cultural arts festival or a book festival or something along those lines, those are opportunities to partner with other organizations and start to build the depth of the humanities programming that you're doing. One thing that we do have coming up that you could as well think about is discussions about democracy beginning August 15th through the spring application period. We do have additional funding for a more perfect union, and these are discussions about democracy or programs that get at the founding and the existence and trajectory of our country as we approach the 250th anniversary. So this has been a brief overview of our program. If you have ever come to us before for a grant, whether you were successful or not, you may be in our grant portal. And so what might happen under some circumstances is you might arrive at the portal and you go to enter all of your information, and up comes a notice that tells you that you're already in the system. And so all this data going back to the 90s is incomplete, often inaccurate. And so you may find yourself feeling stuck. So the thing to do, if you get a message that tells you you are already registered, go to that email address that you're registered in and identify that you've forgotten your password. It'll then send you a reset, and you can come into the portal and start cleaning up that record for you at that point. So you'll be able to update your information and update your organization. If you go to create another organization, say you're no longer with a particular organization, at the organization level, I'm able to help connect you and merge an organization if you have to create an organization. For example, you come in and you have never created an application here before, and suddenly your Central Wisconsin Historical Society, you don't know that it has already gotten grants from us in the past. I can handle that part. If you're entering us new information, I'll be able to take care of that. But when it comes to you coming in and creating a file for yourself, you're going to want to make sure that you edit everything and clean up anything that's missing. So there's a little pencil mark that you would see next to the applicant name or organization, and that's going to allow you to click on that pencil and edit and add the information that's missing. And please be sure to do that in case there is missing information. Every applicant must have a DUNS and EIN number, and a lot of times that isn't carried over in some of that old data that we had. We have to have phone numbers, and we have to have email addresses. And something really critical to know is that all of my email addresses, coming out of this system, when I write to you and say, there's something missing, or I need a different signature, or the date is wrong on this, how do you want to proceed? That's all going to be coming from the grant administrator, and these emails may end up in your spam filter. So please be watching for them, because especially if we're getting close to a deadline, you may end up with something that's ineligible because of a mistake that's been made. So we want to encourage you to, after you submitted, et cetera, to be able to monitor for a bit and see whether or not you've had further information prior to the deadline. The other is that you do need to be keeping track of that contact. All of the contact to your email needs to be something that we can reach you in a timely fashion, because if you're awarded the grant, all of that communication is going to occur through email, through the grant system. And the same for any questions that come up during review of the grants. So if you have questions, please go to wisconsinhumanities.org and double check and see whether or not you've got those answers right there in front of you on our various really detailed web pages. Otherwise, please don't hesitate to email me if you don't find the answer that you're looking for. So I hope this has been useful, and good luck.